Have you ever had that nagging thought, I'm not actually that smart? It's a funny thing, but some of the smartest people I've ever known often feel totally average. So, what if some of your absolute weirdest habits are actually the biggest clues that you have a brilliant mind? We're about to dive into 5 of those strange habits that might just prove you have an extremely high IQ. So, if you've ever had that feeling, you are definitely not alone. The most intelligent people often doubt themselves the most. But if you see yourself in, say, 3 of these 5 habits we're about to cover, your brain might be wired very differently than most. And you're going to want to stick around for the 4th point. It's going to completely change how you think about, overthinking.
All right, so what's the first major sign? It really all comes down to how your brain sees the world. See, a high IQ mind doesn't just process things faster. It literally perceives a different layer of reality, one that's kind of hidden just beneath the surface. And that brings us right to our very first habit, an obsession with patterns. This is when your brain is just constantly, almost automatically, looking for connections in everything. It's like you have this built-in detective that's always on the case, spotting clues that pretty much everyone else misses.
Yeah, a brain with a high IQ is like a pattern recognition machine on steroids. You're probably that person who can predict exactly how a conversation is going to go, or the ending of a movie 10 minutes in. And it's not because you're psychic, it's just that your brain is incredibly good at picking up on all these tiny, subtle cues that just fly right over most people's heads. But there is a downside to having this 24/7 pattern scanner running in your head. It's always on, constantly scanning reality for connections. And honestly, it can be mentally exhausting. The real kicker, though, is that once you see a pattern, whether it's in a relationship or at your job, you can't unsee it. It makes it really hard to just switch off your brain.
Okay, so if habit number 1 is all about seeing the world differently, our second habit is about the unstoppable urge to fix it. People with high IQs are just compelled to solve problems, even when nobody's asked them to, especially then, actually.
Have you ever been at a friend's house and just started reorganizing their bookshelf for fun? Or maybe you've spent a whole weekend building the perfect spreadsheet just to organize something? If that sounds like you are a classic high IQ problem solver. For you, fixing a messy process isn't a chore. It's a really satisfying game, a kind of cognitive play. Being a natural optimizer has its frustrations, though. Inefficiency is, it's genuinely irritating to you because the better way seems so obvious. The real downside is that you get incredibly frustrated when other people don't see the obvious solution that's crystal clear in your mind. It can definitely lead to some friction. Okay, so we've talked about how high IQ minds see the world and how they try to change it. Now let's go a little deeper and look at what's going on inside their heads. We're moving from the external to the internal world of processing, and this is where things get really interesting. Our third habit is a genuine love of silence. Now, I know what you might be thinking, wait, I hate silence. Well, that makes sense. For most people, silence is uncomfortable. It forces them to be alone with their thoughts. But for high IQ people, silence is a sanctuary. It's their chance to quiet all that outside noise and finally hear themselves think. It's not about being antisocial, not at all. It's about needing time to process all the information that's constantly flooding in. Think of your brain like a computer with way too many tabs open. Eventually, it starts to lag. Silence is the chance to close some of those tabs, to let your brain's processor catch up and sort through the chaos. So the next time you feel totally overwhelmed, try this. Instead of reaching for your phone, just find a quiet spot to sit and think. You might be shocked by what comes up. Honestly, in a world that is screaming for your attention 24/7, the ability to just sit and think is a legit superpower. All right, here's the one I promised you. Let's talk about overthinking. We all do it, right? But there is a huge difference between the kind of overthinking that just spins you out with anxiety and the kind that leads to brilliant insights. It's the difference between thinking in circles and thinking in layers. Let's break this down. Thinking in circles is when you just replay the same worry over and over again. It goes nowhere and just creates anxiety. But thinking in layers, that's different. That's when you mentally simulate every possible outcome. You're playing chess with reality 10 moves ahead. You find the flaws, you find the opportunities, you build contingency plans. That's not anxiety. That is strategic depth. So we've looked at perception, we've looked at processing, but what about how high IQ people interact with others? For our final section, we're going to bust a major myth. Because that whole stereotype of the socially awkward genius, it's not the full story. Not even close.
So what is the final, most surprising habit of a truly high IQ person? Well, it's something you would probably never, ever expect. In fact, it's pretty much the opposite of what we've all been taught to think about really smart people. And here it is. The fifth and final habit of a highly intelligent person is the skill of sounding normal. I know, it sounds weird, right? Shouldn't smart people try to sound smart? Well, not necessarily. The absolute smartest people I've ever met are the ones who can take a wildly complex idea and explain it so simply that anyone can get it.
Because at the end of the day, that's what real genius is. It's not about showing off how much you know, it's about how well you can share that knowledge. It's the ability to take something complicated and make it so simple, so elegant, that it actually makes other people feel smart too. See, this isn't about dumbing things down. It's about making big ideas accessible. And this is where raw intellect meets emotional intelligence. The most brilliant people don't just understand complex systems, they understand people. And that intersection, that sweet spot between intellect and empathy, that is the ultimate sign of genius.
So, as we wrap up here, I want you to think for a second. How many of these 5 habits really truly hit home for you? Was it 1, maybe 3? Or did you find yourself nodding along to all 5? Look, if you recognized yourself in even a few of these habits, please do me a favor. Stop downplaying how you're wired. Your habits, your so-called weirdness, they speak for themselves. The world really needs your unique way of seeing things, so please embrace it. So I'll just leave you with this one last question. Are you a hidden genius trying to seem normal? And what would you create? What problems would you solve if you finally gave yourself permission to be brilliant? The world is waiting for your answer.
We'll never agree!
The gap between us is too wide!
But what if this scarf represents our common ground? We can use it to build a bridge between our ideas.
Wow, that's brilliant! How did you manage to connect those two ideas? Help me understand your thought process there.